So now I would like to introduce a really awesome artist from the Iowa City area, Tameka Cage Conley. Conley Cage.
No, it was right the first time. No, it's okay.
Tameka Cage Conley. I'm very dyslexic, so I just invert things for the hell of it. But she will be sharing with you a presentation that, I don't want to give anything away, but it's engaging us in the issue of mass incarceration and other things related to that. So we'll see. We'll let her take it away.
Thank you. So I'm originally from Shreveport, Louisiana, and I did all of my, well, until I got to the Iowa Writers Workshop, all of my studies were done in Louisiana, from Shreveport to undergraduate in New Orleans at Dillard University to graduate school at LSU, where I did a PhD in English and a discourse analysis of the female circumcision debate for my dissertation. Then moved to Pennsylvania to teach at Bucknell University, teaching African American literature. Ended up adjuncting in Pittsburgh. Then thought along the way of really hustling for academic jobs that I could probably make as little money and be considerably more happy pursuing a career as a writer. So that's what I started to do. And then I had my husband and I had our first child. And by this point I had started a novel, had about 100 or so pages. And I realized not too long after my son was born that if I continued in that path of hustling for work, because at that time I was working as a freelance contractor and as an education consultant, that it would probably take me a decade to finish my novel. Because hustling so hard for cash and being not just a mom, but a first-time mom in my late 30s, you know what I'm saying? I was just like, I need some bigger support, time, money. Where can I get that? Oh, MFA program, great idea. So I applied to the, applied to the Writers Workshop. They made a mistake the first time I applied and did not let me in. And I was like, why would you do that? So, so then I reapplied with pretty much the same application, just longer. Just the first time I applied with 25 pages of my novel, the second time I applied with 71. And I got in with the Truman Capote Fellowship. And so we moved here, and I will be here at least until next year, because I was also awarded the Provost Visiting Writer Fellowship in Fiction. So I'm really thrilled and excited to be able to be here in Iowa City. There are some deep challenges about being an African American woman in Iowa City. And yet there are some beautiful privileges as a writer to being here as well. So it's a balance. So what I'll be doing today, how many of you are familiar with The Lesson Before Dying by Ernest Gaines? So I'll give you a little backstory about it. So the novel takes place in Cajun country of Louisiana. William Faulkner has his imagined place, Yoknapatawpha. Ernest Gaines' imagined place is Bayonne, B-A-Y-O-N-N-E. In the story, we're around 1930s Cajun country, Louisiana. The character Jefferson has been falsely accused, everyone knows, of killing a white store owner, a white shopkeeper. Everyone knows that he did not do this, but the unspoken but very realized law is that if a white man dies, most certainly a black man is going to die. If not a tribe, not a community of black men and black people, right? So Jefferson's lawyer, in Jefferson's defense, says he is not even intelligent enough to commit a murder. So if you send him to the electric chair, you will be essentially sending a hog to the electric chair. That was his way of defending his client. Okay. So of course Jefferson is found guilty, and of course he is sentenced to die by electric chair. So his grandmother, who's called his Nanan, decides to solicit the community teacher also a black man, well-learned, educated, um, to make him know that he is a man and not a hog before he dies. And part of the ways that he does that, and that character is unnamed. Um, the novel is written from his perspective, and no one ever calls him by name, so we don't know. He's the teacher. Um, and so one of the ways he tries to get Jefferson to open up is he gives him a diary. And so I'm going to read to you Jefferson's diary in its entirety, and then we can have a conversation about mass incarceration, the death penalty, and I think there's even some overlap with what is happening um, um, with children being separated from their parents and incarcerated in this country. It's a really, I think that there's something that should be broke, that everybody should really feel, I think. You know, I'm not trying to force people into feeling anything, but there should be a kind of brokenness that we feel on the daily when we think about 2 million people incarcerated and then children incarcerated and taken from their parents at the borders. These are atrocious things. So this is Jefferson's diary, of course. It is broken, and you will hear me read, not necessarily in the way that Jefferson might have sounded reading it, but it will be in my approach to a type of Southern dialect, because it is written that way. So I'm going to read it as it is, which is broken, and not adjust anything, not adjust any verbs or anything. You'll just hear it and feel it and understand it as it's meant to be. Okay.
Could you tell us again the name of the book?
Yes,
hear you.
it is A Lesson Before Dying by Ernest Gaines. It was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize.
Is he writing the journal while he's incarcerated?
Yes, while he's incarcerated on death row, waiting for his execution date. Jefferson's diary. Mr. Wiggin, I'm wrong. This is the first time we know his name. So smart, Ernest Gaines. Mr. Wiggin, you say write something, but I don't know what to write. And you say I must be thinking about things I ain't telling nobody, and I ought to put them on paper, but I don't know what to put on paper, because I ain't never wrote nothing but homework. I ain't never wrote a letter in all my life, because Nana used to get other children to write her letter for her and read her letter for her, not me. So I can't think of too much to say, but maybe next time. It's evening, and I done eat my rice and beans, and I done had my cup of milk, and the sun coming in the window, 'cause I can see it splashing on the floor, and I can hear Ned and them talking, and that's about all for now. I couldn't sleep last night 'cause I kept dreaming it, and I don't want to dream it 'cause I'm just walking to somewhere, but I don't know where it's at, and before I get to the door, I wake up, and I want to write in the tablet last night, but you ain't got no light in here but the moon. So I'm writing this morning soon as sun up, but now I forgot what I want to say. Nana brought me some Easter egg, and I ate one, and Nana ate one, and Reverend Ambrose, he ate one, and Reverend Ambrose asked me if I know why the Lord died, and he said he died for me, so I can meet him in heaven. And all he want me to do is say I want to be up there with him and the angels, and say if I mean it with all my heart and soul, I'll go to heaven. And Nana started crying again, and Miss Lou got to hug her, and Nana say all I need to do and make her life worth living is ask the Lord forgive me and the pardon of my sin. And her and Reverend Ambrose was on their knee, and Miss Lou was still in the chair hugging her, and I was glad when Paul come and got me. I don't know what day it is, but last night I couldn't sleep. And I could hear Ned down the way snoring, and I laid there and thought about Samson saying, if the Lord loved me, how come he let my wife die and leave me and them children? And how come he don't come here and take away people like the Maton brothers on the St. Charles River, instead of messing with poor old folks who ain't never done nothing but try and do all they know how to serve him? It looked like the Lord just worked for white folks. Because ever since I wasn't nothing but a little boy, I've been on my own, hauling water to the field on that old water cart with all them dime buckets, and that dipper just hitting, and old Dorothy just trotting, and me up there hitting her with that rope, and all them dime buckets and that dipper just hitting and hitting. against that bale of water so I can get the people their food and their water on time. And the people see me and drop their hoe and come and get their bucket because they know they string on their mark on the top and boosting under bloodweed with his white beans and rice and going where he at this year with very minute. And how come he don't give a man a little breeze if he's so merciful? And Miss Rachel with her rice and greens saying, keep it up, just keep it up and see if a clap of lightning don't come there and knock the fool out you. And Boo saying, let him, I don't care, because a dead nigger is better than a live one any weekday. And Saturday I'm getting drunk and say it again. And Saturday standing in the middle of the road, hollering up in the air saying, come on and get me, come on and get me, see if I care. And falling down in the ditch and rolling out in the road and holding up the bottle so the Lord could see it. Rolling back in the ditch, rolling back in the road and drinking and holding the bottle up so the Lord could see it and saying, I know you don't love nobody but white folks because you they God, not mine. And come on and throw your lightning if you want, because no nigger ain't got no God, and the church going people closing their doors and windows to keep from hearing Boo blaspheming the Lord. But me and the rest of the children in the quarter like Boo because he always brought us candy and cake. I just can't sleep no more because every time I shut my eyes, I see that door. And before I get there, I wake up and I don't go back to sleep because I don't want to walk to that door no more because I don't know what back there is, where they going to put that chair, or if it's supposed to mean death or the grave or heaven. I don't know. I wonder if Boo went to heaven because I know he didn't get religion first. Mr. Wiggin, you say you like what I got here, but you say you still can't give me an A, just a B, because you say I ain't gone deep in me yet. And you know I can if I try hard. And when I ask you what you mean deep in me, you say, just say what's on my mind. So one day you can be saved and you can save the children. And I say, I don't know what you mean. And you say, I do know what you mean. And you look so tired sometimes, Mr. Wiggin. I just feel like telling you I like you. But I don't know how to say this because ain't nobody ever said it to me before. And nobody ever said it. Oh, because I ain't never said it to nobody before, and nobody ain't never said it to me. I know, actually, I'm going to read that again. That's important. Mr. Wiggin, I just feel like telling you I like you, but I don't know how to say this because I ain't never said it to nobody before, and nobody ain't never said it to me. I know I care for Nana, but I don't know if love is care. Because cutting wood and hauling water and things like that, I don't know if that's love or just work to do. And you say that's love, but you say you know I got more and just that. To say, and when I lay there at night and can't sleep, I try and think what you mean I got more, because I ain't done this much thinking and this much writing in all my life before. It's Monday, and I ain't got but just a few days left, and I hope I see my Nana just one more time, because Miss Lou and Reverend Ambrose say she ain't faring too good and couldn't make it with them this time. The Lord know, Mr. Wiggin, I hope I can see her one more time on this earth before I go. Is that love, Mr. Wiggin, when you want to see somebody bad, Mr. Wiggin? Thank you for saying I'm doing, You know, oh, stop. It's oftentimes the most disenfranchised people, right, who have the biggest heart, right? Like that question, is that love when you want to see somebody, right? You know, when you think about just having your entire fate in the hands of the state. I mean, that's the most disastrous part, right, of mass incarceration. When you have a body of government that finds it okay to incarcerate people and really to continue to have a system where we kill people for killing people, right? You know, so that just really hit me, this question of Jefferson wondering and finding such a broad stroke of his humanity days before he is to be murdered. So what does that say in terms of his intellectual talent, his heart, his compassion, his own ability to love? What type of life might have otherwise been molded for him? And what type of life might be molded for us if we engage love as a daily practice like this? Like, is this love? I provide for my family, but is that love, or am I just doing what I'm supposed to do? You know what I'm saying? Like these types of questions. Mr. Wiggin, thank you for saying I'm doing B+ work and you know the A ain't too far. The sheriff and Mr. Pycho and Mr. Morgan come in the cell today, and Mr. Pycho asked me how I'm doing, and I tell him I'm doing all right. And he said yes, he can see I'm all right, and he asked me if he can do something for me, and I tell him no, sir, I'm all right. And he asked me if I want a brand new pencil with a penny eraser, and I told him I would take the pencil, but I don't need the eraser because you told me to just put down anything come in my head, and if it ain't right, just scratch over it and go on. And he said yes, he can see that, and he asked me if I want him to sharpen my pencil, and I said yes, sir, and he sharpened the pencil on a teeny pearl handle knife, and I look at the knife, and I seen Mr. Pycho look up at Chef Geary and Mr. Morgan, and the chef looked back at him, but Mr. Morgan never stopped looking at me like he was trying to figure me. And Mr. Pycho asked me if I want the little knife, and I tell him yes, sir, I didn't mind, and he unhooked the little gold chain from his belt loop and hand me the knife and the chain, and he said it was all mine, and I say just for a few days, and you can have it back. And I held the little knife in my hand and the chain in my other hand and just look at it, and I hear Mr. Pycho say, well, and I hear Mr. Morgan say, it ain't Friday yet, and Mr. Pycho say, you want double that bet, you want to add that trotter, and Mr. Morgan say, it still ain't Friday yet. It's very interesting to me, you know, the way guilt manifests in people who know that they are wrong. Do you know what I'm saying? Like somehow they want Jefferson to validate them for their complicity.
Yeah.
And thinking that somehow letting him have a pocket knife for a few days is somehow making it all right for them to kill this innocent child. And he is a child, by the way. I mean, he's about 17, 18 years old. Old Clark been coming around too, trying to act like a human, but I can see in his face he ain't no good. And I don't even look at him when he asks me if I'm doing all right and can he get me something. No, I just go on writing in my tablet, and I don't care if he do see it after I'm dead and gone. Paul trying to be hard when he ain't like he don't want to get too close to me no more all the time. He is the only one around here know how to talk like a human to people. I know you, Paul, and I know Old Clark, and I know you too, Chef Geary, and you, Mr. Pycho, and Mr. Morgan, and all the rest of you all. I just never say none of this before, but I know y'all, every last one of y'all. Lord have mercy, sweet Jesus, Mr. Wiggin. Where all them people come from when you ask me if some children can come up here and speak to me? I didn't know you was meaning all them children in your class and just sitting there on the floor all quiet and they clean clothes looking at me, and I could see some was scared of me, but most was brave and spoke, and my little cousin Estelle even come up and kissed me on the jaw, and I couldn't hold it back no more. Then after the children, here come the old folks, and looked like everybody from the quarter was here. Miss Julia and Joe and Miss Hart Harriet and Aunt Agnes and Mr. Norman and Miss Sarah and Miss Lilia and Miss Harriet and Miss Lena and God know who all, and Mr. Opal and Miss Philia with her beads and just praying, and all the people saying how good I look, and Lord, have mercy, sweet Jesus, Mr. Wiggin. How you got back here in that suit? That suit looked like it had buck size, because I remember Miss Rita got him that suit way back 10, 11 years back, and he, I'm so sorry. Bach Babin there like he know me, and Miss Rita saying he want to say he glad to see me, and he want to give me one of his Agus, and me just looking at Buck shaking my head, and I can't stop saying, oh Bach, oh Bach, oh Bach. Tell Miss Rita I had to tell him to let go Bach a few times, and still Bach wouldn't turn loose till Miss Rita pried out his hand. This was the first time I cried when they locked that door behind me. This very first time, and I just sat on my bunk crying, but not letting them see or hear me, because I didn't want them to think wrong. But I was crying because of Bach and the marble he gave me, and because of the people come to see me, because they had never done nothing like that for me before. I don't want to sleep at night no more, just catnap in the day while they got light and they got noise, because I don't want to dream about that door every time I shut my eyes. When they brought me in the room and I seen Nana at the table, I seen how old she looked and how tired she looked, and I told her I love her, and I told her I was strong, and she just looked old and tired and pulled me to her and kissed me. And it was the first time she never done that, and it felt good, and I let her hold me long as she wanted. Because you say it was good for her, and I told her I was strong, and she didn't need to come back no more because I was strong. And she just sat there with her eyes most shut like she wanted to go to sleep, looking at me all the time, so Reverend and Miss Lou have to help her up and take her back home. Mr. Wiggin, when I see your girlfriend and y'all together, I just see how pretty she is. And I'm sorry how I talked that day when I was mad at you and say them nasty things about her, because she's so pretty and smiles so pretty. When she look at people, and you can see she ain't putting on airs, and it's just quality in her. And she talks so nice to people, and all the time I want to look at her, but scared to, because she's so pretty and I'm so ugly. And she got on a pretty dress with pretty flowers, and my clothes don't smell good, and I ain't took a bath since Saturday. But I still want to look at her. She says she think I'm looking good and strong, and when she put her hand on my shoulder, I start trembling, and she leaned close and kissed me, and I feel hot, and I can smell her powder scent, and I feel good and scared and hot, because that's the first lady that pretty ever touched me, and nobody that pretty never kissed me. And when y'all left, I come to the door, and I look at her long as I could, and could smell her powder scent, and still feel her mouth on my face. I'm sorry I cry, Mr. Wiggin. I'm sorry I cry when you say you ain't coming back tomorrow. I'm strong, and Reverend Ambrose gonna be here with me, and Mr. Harry coming too. And the reason I cry, because you've been so good to me, Mr. Wiggin, and nobody ain't never been that good to me and make me think I'm somebody. Sheriff Geary asked me what I want for my supper, and I told him I want Nanan to cook me some okra and rice and some pork chop and a cornbread and some clabber. And he said he gonna see what he can do and see what I want for dessert. And I told him just a little ice cream in a cup and a moon pie. They took me and let me stand under the shower with a new bar of soap, and they give me a big white clean towel and brought me back. And I put on some clean clothes and sat down because my food was here, and I ate it every bit, and it was the best meal I know my Nana ever cooked. Sun going down, and I know this is the last one I'm going to ever see, but I'm going to see one more sunrise because I ain't going to sleep tonight. I'm going to sleep a long time after tomorrow. Chef Geary come by after I ate and asked me how I'm doing, and I say I'm doing all right. And he asked me, he say, I ain't never pick up your tablet and look at in it, and he asked me what all I've been writing, and I told him just things. And he say, ain't he done treat me right? And I told him, yes, sir. And he say, ain't his deputies done treat me fair? And I told him, yes, sir. And he say, ain't he done let people visit me anytime? And I say, yes, sir. And he say, didn't he let the children and all the people from the quarter come and visit me just 2 days ago? And I say, yes, sir. And he say, is you going to put that in your tablet? And I say, yes, sir. And he said, good, put that down in your tablet. I treat you good and all the time you've been here. And he said he had to go home because he hadn't ate his supper yet, but for me to call a deputy if I need something. And he asked me if I want the light to stay on all night in case I want to write some more. And I told him, yes, sir. And he say, all right, I can have all the light I want. My light on, but there ain't no more light on the place. And the place is quiet, but nobody's sleeping. They got a moon out there, and I can see the leaves on the tree, but I ain't gonna see no more leaves after tomorrow. I don't know if they got a heaven, because Samson say they can't be, and Boo say that ain't none for a nigger, but Reverend Ambrose say there's one for all men, and Bach don't know. I've been shaking and shaking, but I'm gonna stay strong. I ain't had no business going there with Brother and Bear, because they ain't no good, and I'm gonna be meeting them soon. It's quiet, and I can hear my teeth hitting, and I can hear my heart. When I was a little boy, I was a water boy and rode the cart, but now I gotta be a man and sit in a chair. Don't know if you can read this, Mr. Wiggin. My hand's shaking, and I can hear my heart. I can hear Randy, but I ain't listening no more, 'cause he for the living and not for me. It's late, and I don't know what time it is, but I know it's late, and I just went to the toilet, and I just washed my face. Day breaking, sun coming up. The bird in the tree sound like a bluebird. Sky blue, Mr. Wiggin. Goodbye, Mr. Wiggin. Ooh. Goodbye, Mr. Wiggin. Tell them I'm strong. Tell them I'm a man. Goodbye, Mr. Wiggin. I'm going to ask Paul if he can bring you this. Sincerely, Jefferson. So definitely understand we kind of need to just take a pause, and then as you are led with a response or what you're thinking or feeling, connected to what I read, connected to your own thoughts about mass incarceration. Yeah.
One thing that came to mind for me was my brothers, who have both been inside, and growing up with the feeling that they separate our family, that and thinking about the ways that families aren't together because of the tremendous impact that mass incarceration has on the Black community. A lot of people have relatives who have spent a tremendous amount of time inside. So the family, the integrity of the family is compromised that way. And the rates of incarceration for African Americans and Latinos is about the same. So even Latinos who have citizenship rights are also experiencing family separation due to disproportionate incarceration. And that's another thing to think about, what that does to a community and what that does to a human being. And the first time I saw you do this was with Kevin? Derek, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
And I remember, and the same thing struck me the second time hearing you, was the way he noticed nature and the way his sense perceptions get. Ernest Gaines is a genius.
Yeah.
But the way he humanizes him coming into his humanity.
Yeah.
Like we get to feel it with him.
Right.
And of course that highlights the tragedy.
Yeah.
That the minute he's waking up, he's also dying.
That's all right. That's right. That's all. That's yes. Absolutely. So I was and remain a supporter of Mumia Abu-Jamal, and in that capacity and being part of the Free Mumia movement, I visited him at the time he was at the State Correctional Institution at Greene in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. And the very first time I visited him, it might have been Mother's Day. I mean, there was a bus that had taken a group of people from Philadelphia to the prison. And that's something, so when you talk about family separation, that's something that really, really does strike me. I've had at least 3 of my uncles, in prison, in jails. And it's always someplace far out, right? It's not, they're completely removed from the city, completely removed from loved ones. And it makes it taxing and an aggressive wear and tear, a breakdown of the family member tasked with keeping in touch, tasked with wanting to make sure they stay connected as family. And so this one day I was talking to a woman, the waiting area was full that day, and she said to me, I'm so sick of prisons, I don't know what to do. And she was just talking about how she had just basically been all over Pennsylvania because she has family members in these small little country nowhere towns all over Pennsylvania, and she doesn't even have a car, you know what I mean? So she's taking buses to visit loved ones to make sure that she lets them, so that they don't waste away alone and feel abandoned, and so that she can be near her loved one, right? Anyone else?
I wasn't happy with the role that the church plays they could have been on the side of social justice and picked the wrong side.
Do you mean in terms of just only seeking to,
Jump through this hoop and you'll be redeemed.
yeah. You know, there is a really powerful monologue, if you will, from Reverend Ambrose when he talks about lying to the people, how he lies to them every Sunday. That's probably the most honest moment that he has, that, you know, and I mean, where he's talking about, I tell them it's going to get better, there's going to be a brighter day. It's like, I lie every Sunday, you know. And he feels like that is his duty. That his duty is to bring comfort and to be a stronghold of hope in the face of none, you know. And I'm just curious, I mean, you know, I mean, the black church did get there eventually. It just took them about another 30 years. And honestly, I think I'm wrong, because I do think that there are revolutionary black churches that have existed probably since slavery, if not post. The AME Church, the radical way that the black church was on the side of abolition. But Louisiana, man, Louisiana is I mean, my mother-in-law often says, I just can't believe that you were able to become all that you've become being born and raised in that racist state. And I can't either. It is a miracle I'm sitting here, to be quite honest with you. It is a miracle. I mean, that place is a horror show. You know. So I do understand. I just think that I understand exactly what you're saying, and I do think that we should be more critical of the church then and now. I just also think that it is so complicated because really what Reverend Ambrose was saying is that he's not free either. You know, I just think it's very difficult. I mean, Harriet Tubman had to free herself to free everybody else. You know, she was liberated first. She liberated herself first. And he is not a free person. That's why he is fixated on Jefferson's soul, because that's all he's got. And that's his only piece, is this boy's life can't just end with him going to the electric chair. There's got to be an eternal life for him. Otherwise, I'm lost. Do you know what I mean?
I do, but wasn't eternal life in that prison cell right then? Weren't Wiggins and the tablet providing?
No. Well. I'm sorry. So Mr. Wiggin is the African American school teacher who provided the tablet, and Reverend Ambrose is the pastor of the church.
Right.
And so Jefferson's grandmother solicited them both. She wanted essentially the teacher to work on his mind and the preacher to work on his soul. I love the ingenuity of that grandmother, man. You know, I really do. I mean, she was like, listen, she accepted my grandson is gone. He's gone. If there weren't any marches, there weren't any protests, there wasn't no Black Lives Matter, okay? Keeping it all the way real. There wasn't any of that. So the only resource she had was, I need him to understand before he dies that he is not a hog, that he is a human being, that he is a man, right? That was her commitment. That's all she had left. And honestly, I mean, she is in so many ways the hero of this book as far as I'm concerned, you know. So I hear that. I hear you. I really do. I just think that disenfranchisement brokenness is very hard to overcome for a community. You know. I don't even know if Reverend Ambrose was literate. I'm not sure. My suspicion is that he wasn't, that he would not have been. In the 60s, this is 1930. Because if he was, wouldn't the grandmother have only sent him? Well, he could have taught Jefferson, he could have given Jefferson a diary, right? I mean, when we get down to like some of the essential nature of survival, right? What does it mean when you can't? That's why this diary is so important, is because you see Jefferson engaging with himself and with his soul. It is a tool for his own freedom in so many ways. I mean, what Gaines leads us to believe is that Jefferson saved himself. Any other thoughts or comments, questions?
I was really struck on the interpersonal level, how different people had different investments, and him being okay and him being strong, and his investment and like, tell them I'm strong.
Yeah.
But then, and like some people who just broke through that, right? And the teacher's girlfriend, I think it was, right, who kissed him.
Yeah.
And like that, just really, I don't have any specific things to say about it, but just like watching as people have different investment in, you're strong, you're looking good, and then also just like that niece and the teacher's girlfriend who were just like, and yeah, and his investment too, like fair, dignity, to be seen as strong.
Yeah.
And but then also his crying, talking about crying, and just
Yeah. The light, the darkness, his, because one thing that the teacher, Mr. Wiggins, is trying to get him to do is say, like, you have to be strong for everyone else, because, I mean, and he's saying, how am I going to do that? And he says he'll try, and we see that effort through the diary.
I thought it was curious how the chef or the cook needed validation from Jefferson that he could have his conscience be clear.
Yeah.
And that, he still has to make dinner. Like, regardless of the chef and all the prison guards and everything are complicit to the industrial complex,
Right.
they still carry a sense of morality that is compromised and that needs to be validated by folks they see as the oppressed.
Yeah. I find that striking too. It also says something, doesn't it, about the power of the written word. Because the sheriff wanted to be recorded in the diary of a dying boy going to the electric chair. But it was important for him to come in, and this is a real oppressor move, a real colonizer move, right? To say, are you going to write down how good I was to you? It's like,
Right? Yeah.
It's like, really?
Uh-huh.
But that says something, right? That he wants to be memorialized in this way that says that he was not complicit, when he absolutely is not only complicit, but one of the primary power sources. And I love the fact that he's like, I'm going home to eat my dinner, but the other deputies will be here for you if you need anything.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like the privilege of that, the privilege, the layers of privilege. But taking that pause to delay the comfort of his home, the comfort of his family, to dictate to that really does astound me. But at the same time, it's just kind of like in this day that no one who is actually a racist ever wants to be called one either.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I called someone a racist last Friday, and she called the cops on me. And it was, I was just having a lovely day with my friend Derek Neuro and my son, and we were having shaved ice, and he was leaning on her car and she was very rude about it. I didn't think as a black man he should say anything to her, but I felt I should. Because she shooed him like he was an object or a fly or something. Like, could you get off my car, please? Like this. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like dismissive. You know what I mean? You don't dismiss people like that. And it's not like he was leaning out on the car, sitting on the hood, like having a pizza or something. Like, it was just a moment when we were putting my son in the car. It was very absent-minded, and it was like, just very rude. And, you know, it was obvious that it was because we're black people, you know what I'm saying? And so she called the cops, and thankfully the cops are very nice, but you know, that's something, as I was seeing more and more people have the cops called on them. I mean, that's an extension of this too, right? The extension that like the civil liberties of black. I mean, that line when Jefferson said, "I shouldn't have been with Bear and Brother because they're no good." He was simply with them at the store. They killed the storekeeper. They shot him. He didn't. But that's part of what I'm saying is that if my breath is not valued and I can't be someplace just because, like, I can't be at this swimming pool with socks. There's a woman, a white woman who worked as a lifeguard who called the cops because she said a black man was not observing the dress code of the pool because he was wearing socks. I'm not kidding you. You can look that up. You know what I mean? Or the woman who called the cops on the 8-year-old girl because she was selling water for her to go to Disney World. You know.
And if I could just jump in here with calling the cops, I had a storekeeper threaten to call the cops on me when I asked her if what I was experiencing from her behavior towards me was racism. And she said, "Well, I'll call the cops."
Right,
So
right.
Your point is genuine. It's like, this happened like a month ago, right here in our city. And so, but no one wants to be called a racist. And when you put it on that level, it's like, well, we have something we can do about that, you know?
Right.
And that's invoking that privilege, and that's invoking the state.
Absolutely. To regulate her right to be a racist but not be called one.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna be even more racist.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I did tell her, even with the cops there, and I know, you know, that there's a way you should act, especially if you're black around police. But I couldn't help it. And so I did announce to her, the fact that you call the cops on me, lady, proves you're a racist. Because everybody knows what happens, what could possibly happen when the cops get called on black people, especially a black man. You know what I mean? My friend Derek is a, you know, football player looking guy, like, you know, but oh my God, how eloquent he was. I love that man. Like, he's like my best friend in the world. Like, he walks over and he just introduced himself to the cop. He said who he was. He said we were university professors. He was like, we're graduates of the Iowa Writers Workshop. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Oh, really? I haven't heard.
He was just like, we are upstanding citizens. I asked it, he was like, and that is Dr. Tameka Cage Conley. He was like, we don't know why she called the cops. And the guy was like, I don't know, sir. I just responded to the call. You know, I don't know why she called either, but, you know, and he proceeds to ask me questions about my vehicle. He was not rude. He was very nice. But just the fact that I had to be standing out there with my child in the back seat of my car trying to ease my child to make sure he's okay. You know, and so it was the issue between when I knew she had called the cops and when the cops came. Okay, are we going to get out of this alive? Am I going to be arrested? If I'm arrested, how long is it going to take my husband to get to my child? How long is he going to be? Is he going to be in child protective services? Oh my God, how is he going to respond to that? Is Derek going to make it out of this alive? Am I? And we're going to be assaulted in this parking lot? Like, all these questions that I had that are very legitimate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not irrational, but very legitimate questions I had about the welfare of myself and the welfare of my son. And it's speaking, and my friend. And so when I spoke to my mom, obviously my mom just thought that the whole thing was crazy. She just thought that it was insane that I walked up to the woman and told her she was a racist. She thought it was insane. That, because she said there's nothing you could have said. There's nothing you can ever say. If that is who she is, that is who she's going to be. It's very different than being in a room of people who are saying, like, I understand this. Right? Like our biases, our prejudices. This is not. I just don't believe that we live in the world. I mean, the people that scare me the most are people say, you know, I really don't see color. I'm like, oh, yeah. You know.
Unless they're actually blind.
Right. It's like I got to roll out on that. Like I can't even hear you, right? That I'm like, well, you just announced that you have some issues. So
carelessly.
Right.
I don't see color.
Right. It's like
Check, noted.
help me know how to do that. Right. So I mean, you know, everything was very distilled. Because when the cop first got out of the car, he kind of had this swagger. He kind of did the thing where he tucked his shirt in real ceremoniously, real elaborate. I was like, oh man, I don't know. I just really don't know how this is going to work. And then Derek was like, you don't even have to talk to him. He was like, stay with Maze. I'll go speak to him. And he shook his hand. He was so respectful. And by the end, the cop was like, oh, I understand. I was like, oh, thank God, you know. But yeah, then the idea that, and you know, the interesting thing, just to keep it going, the man, the woman was with was a brown-skinned man. I don't know if he was Latino but he was definitely a man of color. And I had to tell him, I said, the fact that you're brown doesn't make you exempt. You are co-signing with, I don't know what type of self-hatred you have going on, that you align yourself intimately with someone who clearly. Because calling the cops in this age on somebody of color, you know, she would have been perfectly fine if we would have been arrested or hurt. And as we were leaving, after the cops told us we could go, he was telling the cop, I don't appreciate being called a racist. You know, I don't appreciate living in the world with you as one. Like, how about you not be a racist? How about that? Like, that could be, you know, a good way to not be called a racist. You know what I'm saying?
And in what way were you committing any kind of crime at all?
I was committing the crime of telling her all about herself down to her soul. And she did not want to be told that.
Said you're like a whole psychologist, just like,
you know,
Can't you pay me
but I do think that think that a big part of this is that in the America in which we now live, where we elected that thing, you know, like that this is a moment where people are so emboldened and have extreme audacities, the extreme audacity to say, you don't, because there is power in seeing someone for who they are and telling them. That's the reason why when the most villainous person came in and Jefferson said he's trying to talk to me, he said, I just kept writing in my tablet, like I'm not even hearing you, right? That was Jefferson's silent way of saying, I know exactly who you are, and I am not going to validate you in seeking anything from me. Like, I think that telling a racist who they are, it's almost like, you know, just to be, I mean, it does remind me of a scripture when, you know, there's a question about, you know, Christ is engaging the legion, you know, of spirits in this man. And he says, like, who are you? And they say, our name is Legion, for we are many. Right? Like, I do think that racism, it is a decision, it's a commitment, it's an ideology, it is harmful, it is painful, but I do think it's also a spirit. I do think that. And I believe that spiritually she was so unnerved and, as we say, shook, that a black woman would have the audacity to say you're a racist, because what essentially that means is that I was also saying, you believe yourself to be better than me. You think, and all those things are true, right? All those things are true. But once someone owns that they're a racist, that means that they have to really, really do some deep self-reflection. And
Can I put a check mark there right now?
Sure.
And I hate to do this, but
it's okay.
I just want to check in with the time.
Oh, it's late.
And
We've
see
been
where
talking a long time.
No,
Okay.
and it's awesome. And I just want to see if we have time to continue or if we're in a place to transition.
It's 10:55.
Oh, okay.
So we're not doing too bad.
Could you say that again? There's power in yelling?
Yeah. I think that there's power in there's power in telling people exactly who they are. And let me be clear that I mean this in both ways, you know. I think the media is fantastic for having organized this and inviting me, so I just told her that. But I also told this woman that she's a racist. I think that we must do that work, because what happens when you do that is that does dismantle power. That absolutely dismantles power. And she did feel dismantled. And then what did she do?
She also called the police.
But that,
Shouldn't she be
but
punished
that,
for
but that,
Should.
that,
Yeah.
but that is what she chose to do with her white privilege, which is
Sure.
called the cops, which she understands very
should be
clearly.
fined.
Very clearly, she understands that the cops they're not on my team. She knows that they're not on my team. She believes that the cops exist for her, and by and large, they do. Although I must say, Iowa City cops are the most. I've only had positive experiences with them. Maybe it's just grace. Maybe God knows that I've just been with, I don't know.
Well, it's definitely something that we're going to get a chance to revisit in our contemplations and in our small group activity as we go through the next few days. And I just want to invite you, if you want to make any closing comments.
Yeah.
We have like 2 minutes.
So, this was very informal for me when I talked to Tameka about what she wanted me to do. I mean, I could have read something of mine. I don't have any characters in my novel or in my work who have been in prison. But I wanted to share this because Tameka saw a performance that I did with my collaborative partner, Derek Neuro, at the law school. And we, part of what we do with our project called the Reclamation Project, I would love to get information from anybody who might be interested in that. We'll be doing more workshops in the fall. Is we put African and African American writers in conversation with each other. He was born in Ghana, moved to this country when he was 11 years old. I visited Ghana and visited the city where he was born, Kumasi, Ghana, not knowing years down the line I would end up in this little town, not knowing that years down the line he would have to break his parents' hearts and say, "I'm not going to medical school, I'm going to be a writer." And his mom was like, "I don't understand." So we end up here, and I asked him this question. I wonder if ancestral memory would enable me to understand stories you would tell me in Twi. Twi is one of the 3 Ghanaian languages he speaks. If I can understand you and write you a story back in call and response form, and that even though I don't speak the language, I will hear it and still be able to translate something. And we tested it, and the first time we did it, I translated the story almost verbatim, except his story was about a mother leaving her daughter in the morning to walk to work in the darkness. Mine was about a mother leaving her son to walk to work in the light. And he felt that the light represented the resilience of African Americans in the face of racism. So Tameka had heard us do this project, and we put Jefferson in conversation with Lomba, who was incarcerated in Nigeria, in a novel by Helen Habila called Waiting for an Angel. So it was really a privilege to be able to share this with you again and just have a dialogue and open, conversation. I didn't feel like I was up here trying to necessarily be scholarly or trying to be an accomplished writer, or trying to be anything except for a human being working through various stages of my own humanity and my own purpose in my own life. So I appreciate being given that space and sharing that space with you. And I also appreciate the peace that I felt when I walked in this room. I felt a significant presence of peace. So thank you all for that.
Thank you.
Say the name of your book.
Oh, well, it's still being written.
Oh, okay.
The tentative title is This Far by Grace. This Far by Grace.
So lucky you, awesome nonviolent communication teacher is going to give you guys some basics on nonviolent communication, and then I don't know what else they have in store for us, but I know it will be awesome. Lori Bauer and Dasia Taylor.
Okay, all right. Okay, so my name is Lori Bauer, and I have gone through training with the International Center for Nonviolent Communication. I'm a teacher in the school district, and Dasia and I, Dasia, you want to say?
I'm a sophomore at West. I am also a facilitator. I learned through Ms. Bauer, which I guess means that I went through the same program she did. And I'm just happy to learn from her and do this type of stuff.
So we offer trainings at the Catholic Worker House on the first Saturday of the month. And some of you I recognize, and you have been there or you had some experience with nonviolent communication. Would you raise your hand if you've had some experience with it in the past? Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay. So I think we can just dip our toes in it right now, and I'll give you some background. But so we'll just take a little bit of time and we'll integrate what we just experienced with Tameka. And what I'd like you to do is just take a minute to go inside, and as you reflect on what Tameka shared with us, see if you can come up with 3 feeling words. 3 feeling words, okay? So, and I'll stand just so you can hear me. So Dasia and Marian passed out a pink sheet, and if you would hang on to this for the weekend, okay, and hang on to that, put that in your folder, all right? On one side of it, you're going to find there's a very large list of feeling words, okay? At the top, these are feelings when needs are satisfied. And then you'll see it's feelings when our needs are not satisfied. Okay? And then at the bottom, we have some evaluations that are mixed with feelings. Okay? And we just distinguish those words, and we'll probably visit those words at some point in time, those words at the bottom. Okay? Okay. So you might notice that there is a difference in the list. They're not even. Did you guys notice that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, when our needs are not satisfied, we really have a desire to express. And so we have a nice, big, healthy list of when needs are not satisfied. Okay. So this comes from an organization called World Empathy, this list here. Okay, so on the other side, you'll see that there is a wheel. And these are what we call the universal needs. These are things that we all share. They're non-controversial. We can find agreements here. So in this list here, you'll see at the bottom that this was a list that was actually developed by an economist named Manfred Max Neef. And he was an economist that studied poverty. And what he found was that people in poverty had a different currency. And this was their currency. They didn't need money. Well, money would have, done a lot of good things, I'm sure, but they were using this as a way to satisfy their needs. Okay. And he found a lot of interdependence amongst people. What I'd like you to do now is look at that list of needs there, right? You've expressed what your feelings are. What needs are up for you hearing what Tameka shared or about Tameka sharing? Right? You look through there and see what needs are up for you. Okay? What needs are met by what she shared, or what needs are unmet, maybe on the content, the story. Okay? So these are our longings. So when you look at this, you might think, what am I longing for? Or what am I celebrating? What am I mourning? Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you just a little time to look those over, and then we'll do another sharing. And I'll give you another suggestion. Think of those 3 feeling words and see if you can connect them to a need, okay? 3 needs, 3 values. Yeah.
So when you're choosing out of the wheel, you want us to choose only 3 wheels?
You can choose 3 words, 3 areas,
3 areas.
okay? Whatever works for you, okay? So if you will turn to your partner again, and the three needs that you connected with, will you talk a little bit about those, okay?
I found 3 spokes more than like
I know,
3
right?
needs.
Like this, with
Yeah.
this whole one,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, right?
And like, I was thinking like, what do I need from like the government, like from the state and things like that, people who make these rules and regulations. I was more in the honesty part and dipped into safety.
Okay, yeah, right? Honesty is huge. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was kind of looking at autonomy, like with freedom and independence, a little bit, because I was like, well, we're the land of free. However, like, our like incarcerated rate is huge.
It is not true for everybody, right? No, yeah. So freedom is under
Autonomy.
yeah, autonomy. And then the big safety chunk. And then in the community, you know what I mean? Just the you know what I mean, the interdependence piece for me is the people working in the system, just the removal of their consciousness, you know what I mean, the separation, you know, and what does that do to their humanity? You know, how does that impact their humanity to have to walk in there and just call it work every day? You know, what's the impact on their spirit?
Yeah, like how do you have a family and like do this kind of work? How do you go home and tell like your significant other what you did at work today?
Right.
I split up like 6 families.
Right.
It's probably really hard.
Yeah.
I saw that first, and I was thinking about what Tameka had said when she said, well, this kind of overlaps into people like being like incarcerated and separated from their families at the border. So I really thought about that one.
Yeah.
And when I think about it like really hard, I go like into the rest part, especially with like relaxation and leisure and ease, because like being a black female, you don't get that a lot when it comes to situations like this, and just being black in general, like having to deal with like white privilege and things like that, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. And don't put that thing in there right away. Stop it. Okay. So it would be fun to hear just a few of your, what needs you connected with by looking at this and talking with your partner. Maybe if you want to tell us just a little bit what's behind that need. We sometimes call these values, needs. What's important to us. There's lots of ways to talk about them. So would anybody be willing to shout one out? You can tell just the need, or if you want to tell a little bit more about it, you can.
So you have a word on the sheet, it says safety in regards of justice. And I guess like in a step further to restorative justice, and after something is taken away from you. So I wasn't here for the entire presentation, Tameka Conley. I didn't know her personally, so I've been talking a little bit about this in a different setting. But restorative justice in the sense of after a crime or alleged crime or actual crime to you as a person has occurred, a violent act, how do you find your own justice in that? Yeah, they may go to jail or they may be reprimanded by teachers, things like that, but what about you and how do you live afterwards? So, in the character situation, you know, he was into an electric chair, so he doesn't really get that time. Past that, you know, he has a deadline, a hard deadline. And yes, tomorrow isn't promised, but in the same token, how do we live today and how do we live into tomorrow past that? So that's a need that I think that a lot of us struggle with when things happen to us, and trying to figure out that restorative aspect outside of a certain body that's given power to you, and having power over yourself. So kind of jumps around the world here, but yeah, that was probably the biggest one.
I kind of jumped
around the wheel too at first, and then I really appreciated actually that clarifying question, because then I went actually to like hunt down my 3 feeling words and see how they related, and I had said the word sorrow, and I realized that actually that was a form of mourning, and I was surprised to see it under rest. And so also like where things are is really interesting too, because I do a lot, I identify with mourning. I've done a lot of mourning in my life, and it's something that I do, quote unquote, right, that comes to me fairly easily. And it was really cool to think of it as like, I must feel relaxed and somewhat taken care of, like some of those other needs are met so that I can mourn. And also that mourning is a need, actually. And yeah, that it's something that helps me to rest. Like, so rest can precede mourning, and mourning can help with rest. So that was super powerful. Yeah. And I also, we were kind of riffing on social justice and gratitude, so also under rest and the quality of life, not just grateful for like, I'm grateful for my cats and my cup of coffee, but also grateful for like, so grateful for Tameka for reading that, to Ernest Gaines for writing that, like grateful for all those interdependent factors in people.
More.
It wasn't one I had shared with Steph. But acknowledgement really struck with me because of like how that was so lacking from the excerpt that Tameka read and then what she also had shared about like the concept.
I'm sorry, can you project out for
Yeah.
those of us?
Folks hear me okay? Is that better? So it wasn't that one I had shared, but I like really resonated with the idea of acknowledgement because of how lacking that was in the excerpt that Tameka read, as well as what she shared about her own personal life because of the constant like denial of those folks' lived experiences and saying like, no, this isn't painful. Like, no, I am being kind to you. No, I am looking out for you when that wasn't the case at all. And thinking about how I also did that in my own life with, saying to people like you are doing harm, it is hurting me, and how often people will deny that instead of just like taking a moment and say, inside ego and say, like, okay, I acknowledge that I am sorry, and figure out how to move forward from there. For what you were talking about with like restorative justice, like first, like we can't get there if we can't even get to acknowledgement.
Well, I had one line I was just thinking of the contrast between ours, because I had despair as one of my feelings, but I couldn't find it anywhere. I noticed mourning, but then I chose work as the need then, because if I just turn despair into sucking my thumb or thinking about ending it all, I better instead think about productivity and being reliable and getting to it, what we do it.
And I was her partner, and I like that because I connected then, you know, she had despair, I also had pain. And I connect, I mean, what do you do with that? And I connect, under work, I connected with the word responsibility.
I had the word sorrow, and so I decided the closest was mourning. I don't find it a bit restful. It denies me of rest, actually, because I guess I just can't turn off my mind when, you know, sad things happen.
So I guess mine was sad as well, the word that came up for me. And I chose empathy as a whole, as a need, nothing specific to pull out of that. As I think that we all need to be empathetic, and that I need to always continue to be empathetic for the people that are around me that look like me and the folks that don't look like me. And to hear a story of someone who's going through these processes, and then also listen to someone who's a part of my culture go through a situation of not only fear, but surprise and racism. I not only have to be empathetic to her, but I have to be empathetic to the brothers and sisters that look like me that are also locked up and still struggling. I have to be empathetic to the people that are, actually said, noted, the folks that's on the border is dealing with this. I have to be empathetic to the folks that's in Africa going through specific things. How do I continue to remember to show love for those people and let them know that they are loved by folks they may not even know their name or where they're from, but know that there is love for them and that there's folks at home that they can do better and trying to do the work and help.
Two of the three words I had chosen were already spoken to. It was about, what was that? No, what was your word?
Acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement, yeah. If we don't acknowledge our complicity to the systems of oppression, then we don't know how to undo them, or that we need to do them at all. And that, the end goal is restorative justice, to a place where we come to our own truths and reconcile them. But that the second word that was sort of sandwiched between that was responsibility. And I, as I'm looking more at this, I was like, oh crap, my words were on here. So yeah, responsibility is under work. And I see, once that we acknowledge our complicity and our privilege and our oppression, then we can responsibly work towards the end goal of restorative justice. But as I see in the world, there's a lot of work getting done without that first acknowledgement of power dynamics. And so we see a lot of well-meaning people working towards some sort of end, but sort of like flailing around without realizing the full potential of their work because they missed the first step. And so I want to make sure that I made the first step for myself and in the community that I am a part of. If I don't have that understanding first before I get to work, then the work that I do will be incomplete, but not unimportant.
I saw this
kind of push and pull between the safety and autonomy that Jefferson was experiencing. Jefferson was not safe. He wasn't in a place that was safe where his needs were being looked out for. And then he, in that same space, he also gained this self-efficacy that was a breakthrough for his ability to see himself as part of the nature and his observations. And there was a very interesting push and pull between these two needs, where it appears one was not being met and then another one came to being. And I don't know what that means for my experience of being an observer. I don't want to take away his autonomy by noticing that. So I'm still kind of playing with that idea inside my mind.
So, nonviolent communication, the ultimate goal in nonviolent communication is to dissolve enemy images.
To dissolve.
Dissolve our enemy images. That's our ultimate goal. Nonviolent communication can, in your work, in your social justice work, can offer you the energy that you may need to replenish by giving you some time to get empathy from one another. My word to Dasia was exhausted. I think it can be exhausting. And I think by being with one another and giving each other empathy, we can regenerate that energy that we need to take out into the world, because it is so important. So one of the curiosities I had, and we shared up here, was about the people who were participating in this system of people killing people and incarceration and mass incarceration, and what impact it might have on them, what toll might it be taking on not just the people who are incarcerated, but people who are part of that system. How are they, and this is the power dynamic, how are they talking about it? Are they talking about it? Because what we know is that what will happen is the way it's talked about is without honesty, but more as work. Okay. The Nazis had a name for it. It was called Amtssprachen, which was work speak. That's how they talked about what they did. They could speak about it in ways that just made it was just work. Just what they did. So how do we offer empathy into the whole system, to seeing the whole? And that's challenging, and we move that way. That's where we're moving towards, is pulling that all together. How do we give empathy to everyone? But you have to start with yourself. We begin with ourselves. This is an inside-out job. You begin with giving yourself empathy and then moving to the other person. Okay? And as you build your empathy, it starts to come more naturally. You start to see what needs are underneath what any action or word is. Every action, every statement is an attempt to meet a need. And so you'll start to train yourself to hear what those needs are. And it starts to give you some clarity. So nonviolent communication was actually developed by a lot of people. The founder is Marshall Rosenberg. He's on the bottom of the sheet here on the front. And Marshall was a psychologist, and he worked in prisons. He worked with men who had committed very violent crimes. And at the same time, he was also a graduate student with Carl Rogers. And you may know Carl Rogers as being really the psychologist that brought empathy into onto our radar. So as he was learning from Carl Rogers, he was going into prisons and he was offering empathy to people who had done these violent crimes, and he was connecting with their humanity. And he was starting to understand what it was that they were longing for in the violent act that they committed. He taught, he did many things, but eventually he became a taxi driver. And he would pick up his rides, and he would immediately try to engage with them in their judgments about people so he could empathize with them. And so he got this practice going, you know, from person to person all day long, engaging. It doesn't take long to get somebody's judgments out. He could give them empathy and then connect with them, and then he could tell his side. As soon as they felt heard, they were willing to listen to him, to the other side of things. So he went on the road and he started teaching this process, and really he developed it with a lot of different people. And so it's become a worldwide movement. I'll tell you, the country that has the most trainers is in Germany. He spent a lot of time in Germany in the 1970s. And they have a very high number of trainings there. Really what it is a communication practice, but it does begin with, what are you feeling? What are you really needing? What do you sense the other person is feeling? What do you sense they're needing? Typically, your needs overlap. How many times do we say acknowledgement here? Think back, what did the prison guards want in his tablet?
Validation.
Validation and acknowledgement, didn't they? And that was where they both had those needs, but the strategies to meet them were just so vastly different. So getting to these longings, these needs, and being able to connect with another person's humanity. So that's really the essence of nonviolent communication. Do you guys have any questions? Yes.
What are judgments?
They are thoughts. And in this practice, we have a saying, and it is, the uglier the judgment, the more beautiful the need. So it's the idea that when you have that ugly judgment, there's something you're really longing for underneath there. I found that to be true so many times. Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, just to follow up, the difference between maybe an evaluation and a judgment, and I guess that's what I'm trying to understand a little better, like
yes.
Because we can make an evaluation all the time about what's helpful or not helpful, or what's wise, what's not wise. And so how is judgment different from an evaluation we might make any moment?
Yeah, okay. So we have two types of judgments. There's moralistic judgments, and then there are value-based judgments. That's how we think of them. Okay. I'm all about morality. But moralistic is seeing someone as being good, bad, right, or wrong. We're trying to move away from the good, bad, right, and wrong, because that just is going to other another person, okay? Move away from that. And instead, give an observation. What exactly was said or done, okay? And then, so the process has kind of a backbone where it's distinguishing between observation and evaluation. We all have lots of story. We have lots of experiences, and all of that story comes forward, okay? But can you take it down to one observation? Then we move into what you're feeling, because that's an experience. Nobody can, you know what I mean? That's a truth. You know what I mean? When you're feeling something, that's a true thing. That's a truth. When you have a longing, or where you attach it to a longing, that's another truth. Okay? So we think of the observation as being different than an evaluation. We think of the feeling as being different than a thought, right? But we don't deny thoughts. Thoughts are all good. That's good information. And then we think of the needs as being different than strategies. Strategies are how we're going to meet the need. Okay? So the need is the longing. The strategy is how we're going to get it done. We ultimately want to go there. And we think of requests as being different than demands. I want to gauge your willingness to move forward with me instead of asking you to do it out of obligation or duty. So that is the backbone of it. And each of those has so much to explore, so much richness. Yes.
So if we want to know more about this, because you're just at the surface, how would we do that?
Okay, so you can come to the Catholic Worker House on Saturday mornings. You can get my contact information, and I'm happy to come to a group. I'm working with like 8 couples right now. I work with Taproots Kids, so I do lots of different groups. So I'm happy to do that. And there's lots of resources online. If you just Google nonviolent communication in YouTube, you'll find all kinds of different things. One of my favorites right now is Cup of Empathy. Cute, short, little, really short, maybe 4 or 5 minutes long. She models a little process, okay?
What was that again?
It's called Cup of Empathy on YouTube.
Did you still have a question?
Yeah, I just, in a practical sense, wondered, what would a taxi driver say to someone to bring all this out?
Usually they just get in and they start complaining.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And so as soon as he hears the complaint, he starts to give them empathy around the complaint. And usually they'd put in some sort of racial slur. So as soon as he heard the racial slur, he would start giving him empathy. And as soon as they got their empathy and they felt heard, then he would tell his side of it. I want to tell you how I see it. Yeah.
Do you think maybe that's a piece missing in our dialogue around race, is that it's not first met with empathy but rather hostility?
Yeah.
I'm going to pause us here.
Yeah.
Respectfully.
Yeah.
It is 11:58. Lunch is in 2 minutes. So I think that is the jump-off question to a lot of our future conversations. So I want to thank Lori and